Hello and what's up, GSC Pokemon Challenges fam? How you guys doing? It's episode 3 of the Chuck, Pryce, and Jasmine Minimum Battles series, and the first 2 episodes were basically just a warm-up. We knew we have medium fast level up Pokemon, we've got lots of water type moves, fire type moves. We're gonna get through these 3 gyms pretty darn easily, but today we might actually have a challenge on our hands because all the Pokemon we are coming in with are normal and flying type Pokemon whose same type attack bonuses will not help them very much when we get to that Jasmine section, and especially the flying types. They're still going to be neutrally affected by fighting type moves. They're going to be weak against ice type moves, though I do think Pryce will kind of punt on some fights there. But when we get to Jasmine, she leads off with those 2 Magnemites that know Thunder Wave and Thunderbolt, and then she finishes you off with that Steelix with its massive defense stat and its pretty good attacking moves, given that it has Iron Tail and Rock Throw. This could be tough. This could actually be a really tough section to get through with these Pokemon, so we're gonna just have to get into this and see how many actually progress. Now, of course, I'm commenting on this before I have done any play with any of these Pokemon in this section of the game, but I am going to predict that this is the part of the game where we find some of these flying and normal type Pokemon hitting a wall and not being able to progress. We're gonna get straight into the action though, so as usual, place your predictions down below about how many Pokemon you think actually get through. I mentioned it last time, but I think that Noctowl will get through thanks to Nightmare strats. I think Furret and Raticate have enough type coverage in their movesets, given TMs, etc., that they can probably get this section to go, but I'm really worried about the other birds. Fearow might be done. Pidgeot might be done, and that might just eliminate all of their unevolved forms, and we may be looking at our first episode not just with 1 Pokemon failing, but it could be multiple in this one. So I'm going to conservatively say that I think at least 2 Pokemon fail. The Pidgey and the Pidgeotto. Pidgeot maybe can find a way to sneak through. Same for the Fearow, but I'm not super confident in that. The other Pokemon I think will get through. So I'm going to say 5 of 7 will get through in this episode, but tell me what you think. And of course, we will round out the action today with 1 member pick, Sentret, who is also running a pretty interesting moveset and may have a possibility of getting through if Furret gets through, but we'll just have to see. Anyway, without further ado, let's start this one, starting with Pidgeot, and we're just going to go through the 3 fully evolved flying types first. Assuming that they get through, we'll step down to those unevolved forms, but let's start with Pidgeot and see how it goes. So as we come in with our Pidgeot at level 29, we're starting with the moveset of Gust, Sand Attack, Mud Slap, and Quick Attack. And there's not really a whole lot that we can learn in this section. We will get access to Wing Attack at level 33. We can obviously learn Fly after we manage to get through Chuck. And if we need to, we could upgrade to a stronger normal move like Return. But outside of that, there's really not a whole lot going on for this Pokemon in this section as far as new moves, especially when it comes to the Jasmine fight. The only move that we have that's technically super effective there is Mud Slap, and there will be a lot of situations where Return will be stronger than Mud Slap if we get to that point, that it might not actually give us that much of an advantage. We're just gonna have to see if it's even possible to get through that fight or not. Now, of course, this Pokemon, especially with all of its type weaknesses in this section, needs to go and take on the Rocket Hideout first. Now, with that being said, there is one potential issue, which is the scientist Jed right here, who has 3 Magnemites, and we do have to defeat him to turn off the alarm that calls the other Rocket members. So this one could be rough, but I think Mud Slap will be enough. Let's just see. Here we go, Mud Slap, and it is in fact a 1-hit KO with Pidgeot here. It could be a very different story with Pidgey though, and that's what makes me a little bit nervous coming into this section. For now though, we have managed to turn off that switch and we can progress in the game. And sure enough, with no issues whatsoever, we make it all the way to the end of this section with Pidgeot. We're ready to take on the last Team Rocket executive here, and this should be a pretty easy fight overall. Here we really have nothing better better than just to go Gust here. It's looking like it might be a 3-hit KO on this Arbok. In fact, we get a 2-hitter with a crit. Out next comes the Murkrow. I'm just going to stick with the same Gust here. It's going to 2-hit this Pokemon. We get to level 32 as Gloom comes out, and Gust just destroys that Pokemon, allowing us a very easy victory as we clear the Rocket section. And now with a lot of Pokemon, my strategy would be to go straight to Pryce here, but I'm actually going to avoid him for now with this Pokemon, given that we were weak to Ice. I just don't think that that's the smartest play, even though he is very likely to give us a free win sometimes. I think we're better off going down to Chuck's gym where we can take on some fighting type Pokemon, gain a few extra levels, and hopefully get ourselves another badge plus access to Fly if we want it as a way to deal a little bit more damage. So as we come into Chucky Boy's gym, let's just go ahead and take on the Black Belt brothers here. Leading off with the Hitmonlee, of course, I'm going to go Gust, and it gets a nice 1-hit KO there. Second Black Belt brother comes to challenge us with his Hitmonchan, and we're just going to do more of the same, and another 1-hitter. With that out of the way, I think we're going to be just fine to make our way through to the gym leader, so let's just see how this actually goes. And in fact, even on the next trainer in the gym, we get to learn Wing Attack, so we're just going to replace Gust with Wing Attack, have the stronger move, and we should be doing very good damage here. So with a type advantage and a moveset upgrade, I think we're ready to go for Chuck, and I think we're going to get him on the first attempt. Let's just see. So Chuck, of course, leads off with his Primeape, but we're going to be faster and just hit the Wing Attack, which one-shots there. We get to level 34 as Poliwrath comes out. Wing Attack here is a 2-hit KO, but he goes Mind Reader, and we just knock him out the next turn. Easy victory on Chuck there as we get his badge. Of course, Dynamic Punch does absolutely nothing for us since we can't learn it, but we can get Fly out here, and we can pick up a secret potion and make our way back towards Olivine. And then I think actually we should take on Pryce first here. So with that done, we are coming into Pryce's gym where there are no required trainers other than Pryce himself. And this could be super easy if he just uses the wrong moves, or it could be super difficult if he actually hits everything. So let's just see how it actually goes. He leads off, of course, with the Seal. I'm going to go Wing Attack. It's not a 1-hitter, it's a 2-hitter. He hits the Aurora Beam, but it only did 15 damage, so not too bad. We knocked that Pokemon out. Dugong is out next. Wing Attack does about half, and we get critical hit by an Aurora Beam. So 2 hits from our Wing Attack is not enough to knock this Pokemon out, and we go down on the first attempt. Still, that might just be a matter of not getting that crit, so let's try this one again. This time we get an Icy Wind, but we still knock out the first Seal. Here on the Dugong, it gets a non-critical Aurora Beam, which means it shouldn't knock us out the next turn, and we do manage to knock that Pokemon out. Piloswine comes out, and it has higher defense than special defense, but we don't have any special attacks to use against it, and Blizzard ends us. So that is definitely not looking good, and Wing Attack is effectively our strongest same type move, and we don't have a whole lot of other moves to learn here. Obviously, Fly is only a touch stronger, and Swift is the same power, so I think the only move that we could learn that would be stronger here would be Return. So if this turns out to be impossible, we're gonna have to possibly go for Return strats here in order to beat Pryce. Now, one item that could help us here is the Sharp Beak, which is available on Mondays on Route 40. And if we have that item, it's going to slightly power up our Wing Attack, and it could actually result in us being able to deal enough damage to, for example, get that Dugong in a 2-hit KO. So I'm going to test this just a little bit more. So first up on the Seal, it doesn't really change anything. This is still just a 2-hitter. Out comes the Dugong now, and now a critical hit did not one-shot. We're still taking 2 hits to knock that Pokemon out. We're on about half health as we get to Piloswine, and it still just completely destroys us with a single Blizzard. Yes, Blizzard is 70% accurate, but we're going to need it to miss at least 2 Blizzards in order to get through, and we already saw that a critical hit was not one-shotting against that Dugong. So that makes me think that this one isn't going to go. Now, one strategy that we haven't used yet, of course, is to try a Mud Slap on the Piloswine, trying to get it to miss Blizzard. And here it has missed 3 Blizzards in a row. If it misses all 5, we can actually get through with no Blizzard in this and now go into the Wing Attack. And sure, it takes a couple more hits and he is going to Hyper Potion, but without the power of Blizzard, we actually are able to take that Pokemon down. So that's probably the best strategy for these flying types against Pryce is to attack his Piloswine with an accuracy dropping move so that they at least have that opportunity to just get a bunch of Blizzard misses and therefore win. I got that the first attempt where I was using Mud Slap against the Piloswine. I'm not sure that that's going to be enough with some of our other Pokemon, so we're really just going to have to see. But with Pryce done, there is only one gym leader left that we can possibly fight in this challenge, and that is, of course, Jasmine. I'm going to save like 20 times here because I'm super scared of this fight because, yeah, we don't have anything good. If we can find a way to one-shot against those Magnemites with the Mud Slap, we might be okay, but in general, this is not a pretty situation to be in. And honestly, I think we need to give the Paralyzed Cure Berry here. The entire logic is that at least one time when we have a miss, they're likely to use Thunder Wave on us, and maybe we just need to, for example, two-shot the Magnemites with Mud Slap here. I've seen that in a lot of other runs, which is why I'm going to test it out here as well. And it might be that situation where we can at least get to the Steelix on full health without status. But let's see how this goes. So Jasmine attempt number 1 as she leads off with the Magnemite. I'm going Mud Slap. It does over half. We get Thunder Waved, but we heal with the Paralyzed Cure Berry. That's just fine. Second Magnemite comes out. We're going to Mud Slap, and we're hoping that Thunder Wave misses. Instead, it hits, but then it goes for Supersonic and misses Thunderbolt. So we're at least getting to the final Steelix on full health. Now against this Pokemon, the logic for using Mud Slap is not really so much for damage as much as for accuracy. We're hoping that we can get it to not be able to hit too many Iron Tails against us. Still, its Iron Tails are powering up, and we go down easily on the first attempt. Let's try this one again. This time we get a Thunder Wave miss from the first Magnemite, which means when the second Magnemite uses Thunder Wave, even if it did hit, we would simply heal. So that's perfectly fine. We get to the Steelix this time on full health. Still, I'm sticking with the Mud Slap. Again, it's not about the damage, it's about the accuracy, because that Iron Tail does massive damage when it hits. And it's only 3 hits from Iron Tail to knock us out. The only other thing I can think is just to see how much damage we do with our stronger damage dealing moves. Since after all, Mud Slap is only a 20 base power move and it's only 2 times super effective here. So in theory, Wing Attack is stronger in terms of damage, but Wing Attack did 9 damage here. That means that this move would take 12 hits to knock out a Steelix, and I highly doubt we're going to get the luck to get that many misses from Iron Tail, plus the fact that she uses a Hyper Potion. This one is looking impossible. So there are only a couple of TMs that I think we can learn that are technically upgrades in terms of total damage. One, of course, is Return, which I can replace Quick Attack with Return here just in order to have more damage output. And the other move that I'm going to try here is Detect. Detect, of course, allows us to avoid taking damage for a turn, and I'm going to replace Sand Attack with that. The idea being that we can try to use Detect to help us deplete the PP of Iron Tail. I'm not sure if this will work or not, but it's the best idea that I can come up with at this point of a possible way to get through this fight. So here in this one, we're still going Mud Slap on the 2 Magnemites, hoping to get at least 1 Thunder Wave miss. Once we do, we can guarantee that we're getting to the Steelix with this Pokemon. Now I'm going to go for Mud Slap, but I'm also going to mix in some Detects here. Iron Tail has 15 PP, so it's a situation where we really want to make sure that we're taking as few hits as possible while we're setting up our Mud Slaps. We're not sure if it would actually hit on any given turn, of course, and on such low health, any hit from this point will simply knock us out. And while yes, we did get it down to just a little over half HP remaining, there's no way that that's going to be enough to actually knock this Pokemon out. So now let's just see what Return actually does in terms of damage here, because otherwise we're going to be running pretty thin on opportunities to win this fight. So here Return, obviously not maxed out, but it did 12 damage, meaning that it's a better range than what we were looking at before, but it's still not great. We're looking at like a 9-hit KO rather than a 12-hit KO, which is still going to be pretty hard to get given the fact that she will absolutely use a Hyper Potion here. There's no way we get a range where we're going to knock this Steelix out before it gets to Hyper Potion against us. That's also not looking good. So there's one last Hail Mary that's available for a Pokemon in this section if it's failing, and that is to use rare candies. Now, as previously noted, there are a lot of rare candies available on the map. One that I did not not mention last time is this one right here. As you're making your way to Tojo Falls, you can actually pick up a rare candy at this point in the game, meaning that is one additional rare candy that is possible to get before Jasmine. Other rare candies are, as mentioned, of course, we can go south of Goldenrod in order to get one rare candy right there, make our way back to Violet, exposing one more rare candy there. And of course, we can come here to the Whirl Islands, which are actually based on a place that's close to where I live, Tokushima Prefecture. They have a big old bridge that goes across the sea connecting to the Osaka-Kyoto region that has a ton of whirlpools, which is why there are all these islands with whirlpools around them. And when you come in here, you can use Flash with our Abra just for simplicity. Of course, it's not required, but I just don't remember how to root in the dark. But once you get over here, you can get one more rare candy right here. And with that, we have 6 rare candies available at this point in the game that we can use to try to get through this fight. Now, I've always talked in this series about why using rare candies this early in the game is terrible. You're going to effectively be taking a lot more levels away from yourself in the late game than just the number of rare candies you use, because you're using them for very low experience values at this point in the game. But this is a situation where it's pretty clear that we cannot progress with anything else. Like, maxing out return is not going to result in it doing that much more damage, so we can just show that one time here. Maxed out friendship return here, instead of doing 12 damage, did 14 damage, but still that puts us in a situation where we're not really all that much better. We might be talking about like 8 hits now in order to knock out this Steelix, but still we would need god tier luck of not getting hit by Irontail to have any shot getting through with this setup. And here, even when she's getting on low health, she just heals with a hyper potion and the next hit will knock us out. So the number of misses that we would need from Irontail are just completely unreasonable, which is why the rare candies are the only thing left, I think, in our arsenal. So here I'm going to use rare candies, and I'm going to use them based on damage rounding thresholds. Basically, any level that ends in 0, 3, 5, or 8 will result in you doing more damage than other levels. It's just how the game rounds off damage calculations based on level. So at level 38, we should be doing just a little bit more damage than we would be doing, say, at level 37, level 36. In addition to the level up stat boosts, it will result in us doing just that little bit more damage. Let's see at this level what this fight looks like with our Pidgeot. So here we can still see the Magnemites are not one-hit KOs. They're getting closer, but just not quite there yet. Still, we do manage to get to Steelix just fine. And now let's just test what different moves do. So Mud Slap here against the Steelix now does 11 damage per hit, making this a 10-hit KO. And if we just get enough Irontail misses, we could legitimately have a chance here. So we've used all 6 of the Mud Slaps that we had left. Now we're going for our max power return, which has it on red health, but she hyper potions, of course, so we're gonna have to take her down again from the max. Our one return there from max health did 17 damage, so this is getting to be a much better range here at least. Of course, it's going to depend on a lot of misses and possibly a crit, but in fact, with 3 additional levels, we are able to win with our Pidgeot. It was not pretty, it required a lot of luck, it required a lot of misses thanks to those Mud Slaps, but we did manage to get it to go. So Pidgeot remains alive in this challenge. It's definitely suboptimal to be using those rare candies this early though. And we also had to go with a broken TM by using the max power return at this point. Our actual friendship was hovering around 201 at the time that I added on that return, so we didn't actually add on that much more friendship. Return by the time we get to the Elite Four, I think will just naturally be maxed out. I'll still be trying not to spam it with everything, but it will be a legit strat. Here, however, Pidgeot just needs that move. That's how it's going to deal enough damage to actually have a decent chance of getting through here. And yeah, it has progressed in the game. It's not pretty. I'm really worried about Pidgeotto and Pidgey, but we have at least one flying type Pokemon that is officially through this section. So that brings us to Pidgeot's Gen 1 early game normal flying counterpart, which is Fearow, which is coming into this section with Peck, Mudslap, Pursuit, and Swift. Yet again, none of these moves are really going to do all that much for us against the Jasmine fight. It's also worth noting that we are in the medium fast level up group, so we aren't going to gain levels quite as quickly. So obviously we have no effective level up moves here. I mean, we're going to get Mirror Move, I think, but that's probably not going to help us that much. At least I don't think. Still, we can test everything out just to see if we gain any sort of advantage. Pursuit, I think, is the move that we'll have to go when we upgrade movesets, since that move I don't think is really going to do that much for us here. Besides, we could learn Thief if we really wanted to have a dark type move, or Hidden Power Dark, and there's no way we're getting to Drill Peck in this section with our slower level up group. So this is basically the best that we've got. So no messing around here. We're going to go straight to the Rocket Hideout first, just to make sure that we manage to take out all of those Pokemon and gain as many levels as we possibly can before we get into something really hard. Now, of course, Fearow with its good attack stat easily gets through all of the rockets, bringing us to the final Rocket Executive. I don't think this one's going to be terribly difficult, but let's just see. Of course, she leads off with the Arbok. Swift is our best move here. It's going to be a 2-hit KO as we knock that Pokemon out. Murkrow's out next. Swift does not get the 1-hitter. It's a 2-hitter there as well. And that brings out the Gloom, where we can switch to Peck since it's super effective, but even that does not get the 1-hitter. It's a 2-hit KO because we're at a lower level than we were here with Pidgeot. We're only at level 30 at this point, which means that in theory, this section's going to be just a little bit harder since we are in a slower level up group at this point in the game. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't really think about, but the so-called medium slow level up group is actually the fastest level up group in the early game. It's only really overtaken by fast level up Pokemon in the 30s, and then it doesn't get overtaken by the so-called medium fast level up group until you're about level 60. So until that point, those Pokemon are always going to be slightly higher leveled than most of the field, and we're really not going to be getting to anything like level 60 until we're in the post game. So effectively, through the Elite Four, the medium slow level up group is going to be at least very near to the highest level we can get, with only fast level up Pokemon really overtaking them as we get to the League and the Champion in general. So as we manage to easily get through that Rocket section, at least, we're ready to move on, and we're going to take the same routing as with Pidgeot. It's on to Chuck first, then we will go to Pryce, then we will go back to Jasmine. It's a little bit of jumping around, but fortunately beating Chuck first gets us access to Fly, which helps a little bit with routing, but definitely this is not ideal. If you were doing a speed-based challenge, you would want to grind a whole bunch of levels, number one, but you'd also likely want to manipulate your hidden power typing so that you could get something like hidden power water or hidden power ground or something that allows you to do significantly more damage to Jasmine in order to get this challenge to go effectively. If you're just using max DVs or 0 DVs, yes, 0 DVs gives you hidden power fighting, but it's really not going to do that great against the Steelix, given that on 0 DVs, you're running a 31 power hidden power move. Anyway, that's all just my conjecture, but for now, let's go ahead and get into Chuck's gym, where this one shouldn't be too bad, given that we have Stab Peck. Here, Peck is not quite a 1-hitter on Hitmonlee, though. It's going to take 2 hits to knock that Pokemon out, just due to the fact that this is a little bit weaker than Gust, and we're at the lower level. So as the Hitmonchan comes out, yet again, it's going to be a 2-hitter as we take a Thunder Punch, but we do manage to knock that Pokemon out, allowing us to move on in the gym. So definitely not bad. It's just not going to be as good or consistent as we were with Pidgeot. Now, we are able to get through all of those trainers in the gym, but they weren't just a bunch of 1-hit KOs like we had with Pidgeot, especially after it got access to Wing Attack. Instead, we were basically 2-hit KOing the evolved Pokemon, which meant we took a lot of damage. We actually had to backtrack out to heal before Chuck. That means Chuck is also going to be slightly less consistent, and this could actually be a challenge, but let's get into it and find out. So he leads off with his Primeape, of course. We're going to go Peck, since effectively Peck, when it's super effective, is the strongest move here, and it's just barely not getting the range. We'll knock out Primeape the next turn, and we get to learn Mirror Move via level up. I'm going to just slap it on over Pursuit, just because this could be kind of interesting to see. Here, we're going to Peck on the Poliwrath, but we can see this looks like a 3-hit KO, and here we just simply knock ourselves out in confusion. So we actually lose the first attempt to Chuck in spite of our type advantage because we just don't have a stronger flying type move. You cannot get fly until after you beat Chuck. So here I will learn mirror move yet again, and I do find it kind of interesting just to see if we can manage to mirror move something like Dynamic Punch back at him. Or here he used Hypnosis, which allows us to mirror move the move, and he uses a full heal, but that just guarantees the win at that point because he can't move the turn that he heals, and we're a faster Pokemon. So we actually beat Chuck on the second attempt, but it really was about mirror moving that Hypnosis to make it go. And now we pick up Fly, and with Pidgeot, I actually avoided learning this move since it is a HM move. I thought maybe it wouldn't be the right play, but here with Fearow, it's effectively the strongest move that we can get, short of going for overpowered, unreasonable TMs at this point. So I'm going to replace Peck with Fly, doubling our attacking power in order to have a better chance here against Pryce. Now this could also be a situation where the Sharp Beak comes in handy, so I'm going to just follow that same strategy of adding on the Sharp Beak here in order to see if it gets me a better range somehow in this fight. And with that, we're ready to take on Pryce for the first time. Let's just see how it goes. Pryce leads off with his Seal, and I think the only strategy is to go for Fly and then hit Fly right there. He hits Aurora Beam because it's not a one-hit KO, and then we can just Swift that Pokemon down. Now against the Dugong, we go Fly, so it misses the first Aurora Beam. It looks like we did about half there, and we're able to knock it out the next turn. We get to level 33 as Piloswine comes out. We saw previously that the best strategy here was to Mud Slap, hoping to get the Blizzard misses. But when it finally does hit Blizzard, we're done. We have no way to survive against that move. And since Fly is effectively our strongest move here, we did actually manage to one-shot against the first Seal. That should help our ranges a little bit. Here, we're still going to be on slightly more than half health going to the Piloswine this time. That probably doesn't matter as far as the range from Blizzard though. What we really need is a run where he misses 5 Blizzards in a row while we're using the Mud Slaps. He is getting less accurate each subsequent turn, but it's still probably pretty luck-based to get through this. So here I'm starting to think that because of our lower level, we just don't have what it takes in order to get through this fight with our Fearow, short of slapping on the TM for return. This is effectively the only upgraded move that we can get at this point that will actually give us some reasonable chance of being able to progress in the game. So I'm simply going to learn Return over Swift. I'll go without powering it up once, and I'm also going to add on Detect here. Of course, Detect allows us to, in theory at least, stall out some of the PP of that Piloswine. So I'm just going to forget Mirror Move. I don't see it being actually that useful as we progress. Detect, on the other hand, has an immediate value in helping us take out at least 3 of the PP of that Blizzard as we get to the final Piloswine. So let's just see how this goes. Now, we haven't maxed out our friendship. We're just using Return with the current friendship we have, but it does manage to one-shot the Seal. As we get to the Dugong, it's doing about half, so it's pretty much on par right now with our Fly. That brings us to the Piloswine at level 33. I'm going to Detect turn 1, Mud Slap turn 2, Detect turn 3, Mud Slap turn 4. We actually get hit there, but if we can just manage to dodge 2 of those Blizzards here, we should at least have a decent chance now while using the Detect strategy. It's worth noting that this Return without being maxed out is not necessarily one-shotting the Seal. It's still a range here, which also plays into how much luck we're going to need to get through this fight, since after all, that means that we're going to need to really get better luck here on the final Piloswine. Still, turn 1, turn 3, and turn 5, we can 100% guarantee that Detect will work, and this time we managed to get through the Piloswine with it missing all of its Blizzards. So now I'm going to go Return against this Pokemon. We did really good damage. It did crit a Fury attack against us, but we simply knock him out the next turn, allowing us to actually take down Pryce with Fearow. That was not pretty, but it was in the end possible. You're just going to have to upgrade the moves though. And with that done, there's nothing to do but come back and fight against Jasmine. And this one could be really, really tough. We know that we can use 6 rare candies here. That might be our only ticket getting through through this one. Of course, if you're running more standard with vitamins, for example, you may be able to boost your attack stat or your defense stat or something enough to make this fight a little bit more reasonable. But in general, I just don't see any way that Jasmine's ever really consistent with a Fearow outside of grinding extra levels or slamming rare candies. And you'd always rather just grind extra levels here. At this point in the game, it's going to be far more efficient than actually using the rare candies and then not having them available for the late game. But here we do not have that option to grind additional levels. We just got to go straight into the fight and try to win with our Pokemon as it is. This could be rough, but I think the strategy remains to give a Paralyzed Cure Berry just so that we have a better chance of getting through the 2 Magnemites without any paralysis. And then we just have to see what we can actually do when we get to the Steelix. So as we come into Jasmine this time with a level 33 Fearow, we go Mud Slap. It does a little over half. We get Thunder Waved, but now we can use Mud Slap again to knock out the first Magnemite as we used our Paralyzed Cure Berry. Second Magnemite comes out. It manages to hit the Thunder Wave still, and there's nothing we can do about that, though we took no damage, so we do manage to get to the Steelix at least. Let's see what our different moves do here as we take our first critical hit Iron Tail and nearly go down in one hit. We didn't even get a land to hit due to paralysis and that strong Iron Tail turn 1. So clearly Iron Tail has us in the 3-hit KO range at least, and we're going to need pretty darn good luck in order to get through without any status here. This time we do get the Thunder Wave miss though, so we get to the second Magnemite, which tried to use Supersonic. That's perfectly fine by me. And now against the Steelix, we're going to be faster. Let's just see what the damage ranges are. We get a critical hit Mud Slap that did 15 damage. So a non-crit is going to be doing like 7 or 8 damage here. Not very good. Return, which is our strongest attacking move at this point, did about 10 damage after that, meaning that that's still an 11-hit KO. We are getting a lot of misses from Steelix's Iron Tail though, so I'm going to just go all in on the Mud Slaps, but we can see it just simply 2-shot me with Iron Tail. Clearly not one-shotting me with the crit was just a bad damage roll. Otherwise, it can just get the 2-hit range on us at this level. So we know a couple things off the bat. Based on the Pidgeot, the first thing that we're going to do, of course, is to max out the power of our return here. We're sitting at 192 friendship at this point, but that's just going to be edited up to be 255 friendship. So that is now as strong as our return can possibly get. Let's see how much damage we do now to the Steelix. So now against Steelix with the maxed out friendship, return did 14 damage. Not great. And given that we're in a 2-hit KO at our current level, there's just not a really good chance of getting through at this current level with this setup. So that means it's time for the rare candies. So here with these 6 available rare candies, we're going to start by going up to level 35. That is our first damage rounding threshold, any level that ends in 0, 3, 5, or 8. So let's get to level 35 first and just see what happens. This is probably going to fail. We're going to go up to level 38 after this. And then the cap is level 39 because that's just how many rare candies we've got. Let's see if we can possibly get this to go. Here, of course, the Magnemites remain 2-hit KOs at this level, but we do manage to get through to the Steelix. Now let's see what Mud Slap does at this level. It does 11 damage, so it's looking similar to what we were doing with the Pidgeot at this point, and now we are in a 3-hit KO range from that Iron Tail. So if we can just get enough misses, we should at least have a chance here. So after we get Steelix down all the way on accuracy, we can go for a return. It has 39 HP now, and after the return we did 17 damage. So still not great, but it's very similar to what we were doing with the Pidgeot at the end. It still, I think, results in a 7-hit KO here, but if we can get enough Iron Tail misses, we will have a chance to get through at our current level. We get a nice crit, and that allows us to win at level 35 with the Fearow. So those 2 rare candies clearly make a massive difference in the amount of damage that we do to Jasmine, which is why they're basically required here. Yes, you could reset and try to get the range when you're like an 11-hit KO, but there's a massive difference when you're being 3-hit KO'd by your opponent versus being 2-hit KO'd by your opponent, and when you need 7 hits to KO the opponent versus 11 hits to KO the opponent. That's a massive difference in the amount of luck that it takes to get through the fight, and we actually managed to get it with Fearow. Not pretty, possible. That's basically going to be the line with these fully evolved flying normal type Pokemon. But that brings us to the last fully evolved Pokemon in this one, which is Noctowl, and it has a little ace up its sleeve in Nightmare that might change this narrative quite a bit. And of course, Noctowl is coming in with Peck, Nightmare, Hypnosis, and Reflect. Reflect also helps quite a bit here because it's going to allow us to cut down the damage we take from those physical moves. Once again, we don't get that many good moves here, but Hypnosis and Nightmare could make all of those other moveset upgrades completely unnecessary, because as long as we're faster than the opponent and we are able to put them to sleep, we should just honestly have no issues. The question is just, will we be faster than all of the major opponents? I think we will be faster than the Steelix, obviously, and Magnemites aren't very fast either, but then we have to see what kind of ranges we actually get on those opponents. What we know though is that with the Nightmare strats, if they just stay asleep for a long time, Nightmare plus a little chip damage from us will guarantee that they're at least a 4-hit KO. But oftentimes, even we can take them down in 3 turns by just dealing extra damage with our other moves. So that's what I'm expecting to be the result of this one. Let's see if it actually works though. Now, this strategy is much slower than just the all-out attack strategies that we were using before, which is why I generally would avoid using Hypnosis and Nightmare as much as possible in this section, especially against weak traders. I think we're better off just going all in on attack, but against anything that's even a little bit scary, going for that Hypnosis plus Nightmare strat is the best strategy that I think we can muster. Now, unlike any of the previous Pokemon, we actually struggle on the first Rocket Executive here in the basement because of the fact that Noctowl, while it is faster than all of these Pokemon, just doesn't deal a whole lot of damage with its move Peck, and keeping them asleep so that we can use Nightmare is actually pretty inconsistent, of course. Like, even this coughing when it hits Sludge is doing pretty massive damage to us. So we have to set up Reflect and Hypnosis, just hope that they stay asleep. Once they do, we do get through that fight nice and easy, but it's actually not a consistent fight. I took a couple of resets on that trainer. So as we come to the final Rocket Executive in this section, it's just not guaranteed that this is going to be perfectly consistent by any means. So we're just going to have to see if we can actually manage to win here. So first off, against the Arbok, I'm going to put this Pokemon to sleep and set up Reflect, since the first 2 Pokemon will be physical attackers. Just makes sense to take a little less damage from them. Now we can go into Peck to knock out this Arbok. It took 4 hits in total. Murkrow comes out next. I'm going to try to put it to sleep here and go Nightmare, and now reset up my Reflect so that when it wakes up and tries to use Peck, it's not going to do as much damage. And then we do manage to knock that Pokemon out. Gloom, we don't need to do anything fancy. Just a couple of Pecks will get the job done. Especially with Reflect, we don't have to worry about it dropping acid. We get the nice, easy victory. And with that Rocket section done, we are able to move on in the game. This is a Pokemon for whom things are kind of different, because on the one hand, we've got a lot more special defense than the other 2 flying types that we've run so far. And that makes me think we at least have a chance to come straight here to Pryce, because our whole strategy is not really to damage him with attacking moves, it's to put him to sleep and use Nightmare strats. And it might just work out. Let's get into it and find out. So Pryce, attempt number 1 on the Seal, we just need to land Hypnosis. It goes Icy Wind and slows us down, unfortunately, but then we do get it to sleep. We set up the Nightmare. Reflect, I think, has no value here because I don't think he's going to go for physical moves, so we simply knock that Pokemon out. Next, the Dugong is faster because of the speed drop from Icy Wind, but we do eventually get it to go to sleep. We can set up Nightmare again, but it immediately wakes up and just knocks us out. This time we get to Dugong with no speed drops, so we immediately put it to sleep and set up Nightmare. We're just hoping that it stays asleep for a long time. We got a nice critical hit there with our Peck, but then it woke up and hit us with Aurora Beam, so we put it back to sleep only for it to immediately wake up again. We land a 3rd Hypnosis, and once again Nightmare this Pokemon. If it stays asleep, it will go down. Sure enough, it does. We get to level 30 as Piloswine comes out. I hit Hypnosis. I misclicked and used Peck, but it missed the Blizzard, so I guess that's fine. We can now put it back to sleep and use Nightmare, and I'm just pecking to do some chip damage on top, and he goes down on this attempt. So just a couple attempts to get through Pryce there. That of course boosts our special attack, but not our special defense because of the exact values that we have. Apparently we need like over 200 special defense before we actually get a badge boost that actually works from that badge. We're gonna just have to see if that's ever actually relevant fact factor in any of these fights. It probably is, but not in this section. All of these Pokemon are basically using physical moves except Pryce, and sometimes Chuck's Poliwrath, but even then, we're not too worried about it. I don't think the badge boost actually would make that much difference in these sections, and hey, we're just playing the game as it was programmed. And now it turns out that I did not go to the lighthouse earlier, so here we actually have to fight this Pikachu trainer, and I don't really have anything good here because I only know Peck, so I put it to sleep and use Nightmare, and we do manage to take it down, but we're gonna have to fight our way up the lighthouse here, and that at least gives us the opportunity to gain maybe one additional level as we progress in the game. And after reaching Jasmine at the top, we can simply make our way out of here and go down to Cyanwood, where we've got to beat Chuck before we have any real shot at Jasmine, I think. But even then, like, it's basically going to come down to the luck of the Nightmare strats and really getting that Steelix to stay asleep for a lot of turns if we're actually going to get through this one. So let's come into Chuck's gym and gain as many levels as we can, starting with the Black Belt bros here. Against the Hitmonlee, I'm just going to try to go all in on attack. Peck is going to be a 2-hit KO here. It's perfectly fine. I don't think we need to actually set up any hypnosises when we have a 2-hit KO on these Pokemon. And with them going down, I don't foresee any major issues getting to the gym leader himself. But funny enough, because we don't have a good attack stat, I actually took a reset on this next trainer in the gym because he used Seismic Toss to do really good damage with his Machop, and then he knows Rock Slide with his Machoke, which was enough to knock me out. So I'm going to put this Pokemon to sleep before going for the Pecks. We get a nice crit here. Seismic Toss after that will not knock us out, so we do in fact manage to progress in the game. The last trainer poses no issue for us whatsoever, so we're ready to make our way straight to Chucky Boy now, and let's see what kind of ranges we're getting, but I think we're going to have to go for the Hypnosis Nightmare strats to have a good chance here. First up, of course, he's got his Primeape. I'm just going to put this Pokemon to sleep and then set up Reflect. I think this is the best strategy. Let's Nightmare it as it uses Rage, and then Peck does over half, so we're just going to be able to two-shot that Pokemon from there. Poliwrath is out next. We go Hypnosis. Of course, he's going to use a full heal here, but I'm just going to use that as a chance to reset up my Reflect, put him back to sleep, now Nightmare, and now we can start pecking on this Pokemon, and it looks like we're going to take him down on the first attempt thanks to the Nightmare plus the fact that we had that nice peck going. So now we get to level up and we get to learn Takedown, which is a much stronger move than Peck. So for now, I'm going to actually forget Peck to learn Takedown. Yes, it has recoil, but I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. It is just significantly stronger than anything else we can get, including Fly. The argument for Fly, of course, is that it can be used to help PP stall certain types of attacks when they can't actually hit you in the air. I don't think that's going to be a major concern in this next fight, though. I think this one comes down to the sleep strats, so I'm just going to let Kenya learn how to fly here and take us back to Olivine. So now we can make our way to Jasmine's gym, where rather than relying on the Mud Slap strats, I mean, that could be a YOLO last strat to use before we go for like rare candies or something, but instead what I'm actually going to be trying to do here is to simply set up the Hypnosis and Nightmare and then just hope to do a little chip damage and hope that that's enough to get me through this fight. I will give the Paralyzed Cure Berry to help me out in the event that I miss a Hypnosis on one of those Magnemites, but we're definitely going to have to get them both asleep if we're going to have a chance of getting through this. So Jasmine attempt number 1, I go for Hypnosis and miss. It lands the Thunder Wave, and then I miss the next Hypnosis as it goes Supersonic. Then I hit myself in Confusion, but it still misses everything. So we do manage to actually get the Magnemite to sleep and set up the Nightmare, and I'm kind of interested to see what Takedown will actually do here. It did pretty decent damage, allowing us to take that first Magnemite down. Then we miss the Hypnosis on the second Magnemite though and get confused, and that's basically the end of us. Once it starts Thunderbolting here, I see no chance of getting through that Pokemon. We're going to need better accuracy luck than that. This time we're at least getting better luck on the second Magnemite. It wakes up, but we still had the Paralyzed Cure Berry on. We put it back to sleep. We Nightmare it again, and now we should be able to take it down with Takedown. takedown. Very nice. So this is our first shot at Steelix. We put it to sleep turn 1. We're nightmaring turn 2. It wakes up and hits the Iron Tail, which is not what we wanted to see. So we're going to have to put it to sleep and nightmare again. Now I'm going to set up Reflect so that I have more resistance to its physical moves. Takedown does like nothing here against this Pokemon, but that's not really the point. She is going to stay asleep when she Hyper Potions. She cannot wake up on that turn, and we're just using our takedown to slowly chip this Pokemon away. So we actually managed to beat Jasmine on that attempt. The first time that we actually got to Steelix, we were able to win that fight with our Noctowl. No need to use rare candies, no need to add on return, just relying on that Nightmare strat. That just shows again, Nightmare is completely OP. Pokemon that should not be able to progress on minimum battles are absolutely going to have a chance to get through with Nightmare strats. As teams get bigger though, it's going to be harder and harder to just rely on Nightmare. You're going to have to start to get better moves around it in order to make it work. But here the Reflect plus Hypnosis, Nightmare, and just one attacking move is enough for this Pokemon to progress. So now as we come in with Pidgeotto, we have to take everything that we just learned from Pidgeot in this one into account, because the fact is that we're going to need to use some different moves if we're going to get through this one. So I'm actually going to learn Return right here over Quick Attack, and I'm going to learn the TM for Detect in the place of Swift here. We'll keep Gust for now. It's obviously going to get replaced as well. Basically, just based on the Pidgeot results, I think that this is required for this Pokemon to have any chance of getting through here. And because we're the unevolved form, we're even more likely to struggle even with overpowered moves. So I think this is the best way to progress in the game. After that, we're basically going to follow the same routing that we did with our Pidgeot. We know we'll get Wing Attack in this section, and I think that's our best chance of being able to progress easily. Now, it is worth testing out how much damage we do with Mud Slap against Jed's Magnemites, and we can see that Pidgeotto is not one-shotting against these Pokemon, whereas Pidgeot was. And it just kind of goes to show how important those extra stats are. We might be able to get a one-hit KO range here on these Pokemon, but it's definitely not consistent. We can still get through Jed just fine with the Mud Slap. It's just not as pretty as it was with our evolved form. Still, for everything else down here, the maxed out power return should make really quick work of them, so let's get straight through this section. Now, it turns out on the second to last executive that return is not one-shotting everything here. We did not one-shot against either the Raticate or the Coughing on that team, and that could spell a little bit of trouble for this Pokemon. So as we get to the final executive, we can go return here, but it's going to be a 2-hit KO on the Arbok. Out comes the Murkrow, we go for return, and we do get the one-hitter there. And now against Gloom, return is effectively our strongest move here still, especially since we've got the Pink Bow on. Turns out to be a 2-hit KO though. I don't know, Gust might have been better. I don't think so though. But with that section done, it's on to Chuck's gym. Let's get as many levels as we can before we take on these tough gym leaders. I always find it funny when I'm talking about taking more battles to level up, of course, because this is a minimum battles series, which means we can't actually take on any trainers that aren't required to beat the game, but we can control our routing somewhat to make sure that we take on as many of the weaker trainers as possible first to allow a Pokemon to get more levels for the tougher opponents. I've heard some people in the comments say that we should do a more hardcore version of the minimum battles where you have to go directly to each gym leader in the fewest number of battles possible, in which case you would basically have to go to Chuck first, then to Jasmine, then to Pryce, and you would have to put off things like that whole grinding the rocket hideout until just before Pryce, because that's the only point it's actually required. That could add a lot of difficulty for a Pokemon to get through, even if it is technically the most efficient routing through the game. Anyway, that is just a side note. As we come into Chuck's gym, we've got to take on the Black Belt brothers. They lead off, of course, with the Hitmonlee. We're going to go return and not quite get the one-hit KO. We two-shot that Pokemon, which is kind of sad given the fact that we're using our strongest move here. But that's about to change after this Hitmonchan, which we two-shot. We're going to level up very quickly. I think after this next Black Belt is where we get access to Wing Attack. Sure enough, we get Wing Attack on the next Pokemon, so I'm going to forget Gust to learn Wing Attack here. And now Wing Attack is effectively our strongest move against these fighting types, since it is both a same type move and is super effective. And that should allow us to score some nice one-hit KOs, but let's just see if it actually gets us through Chucky Boy. enjoy. So Chuck, attempt number 1 here. He leads off with the Primeape. I'm just going Wing Attack. We get the nice one-hit KO there as we get to level 34. Poliwrath is out next. Wing Attack does over half as he hits the critical hit Dynamic Punch, and then we hit ourselves in Confusion to lose. If not for hitting ourselves in Confusion, we would have still won that after the crit. So that makes me feel pretty good as we go into the second attempt. We just need slightly better luck than that. This time on the Poliwrath, we hit the Wing Attack, it misses Hypnosis, and just like that, we win. So Chuck kind of trolled us once there with a really lucky run of his own, but after that, we shouldn't ever really struggle on that fight with our Pidgeotto. Now, once again, I'm not going to immediately learn Fly here because Fly isn't actually that useful for us with this Pokemon. Like the next 2 battles, we're just going to want to go Return, not Fly, which makes me think it's better to just avoid learning the move for now. Anyway, we have made it now to Pryce, and we're ready to try our first attempt with our Pidgeotto. So of course, he leads off with the Seal. Let's see what the range is with Return. It does get the one-hit KO. That brings out Dugong next. I'm going to go Return here. He goes for Roar Beam. It looks like we did slightly less than half, but we do manage the 2-hitter there, so it's probably a range. Now we're going like Fearow with the Detect into Mud Slap strat, hoping that the blizzards miss. We've got to get 2 blizzard misses with this setup rather than 5, which is why it's a good strategy. Granted, you may be able to argue that we'd be better off just going all in on attack, and here we can see that Return does not quite get the range on the Seal. It survived with 1 HP, so it's worth noting that Seal is not just a guaranteed one-hit KO there. Now, it's worth noting that we're also using Return with the Pink Bow, but I thought I had put in max power. It's actually less than max power right now, so by boosting our friendship, we could also further improve this Pokemon a little bit, and as we take another reset here, I think that's actually the way to go. I wouldn't just do that willy-nilly usually, but of course, we've already seen the results of Pidgeot, which is why I know that we should just go for the maxed out power here, and the Pink Bow's adding just a little more damage to that. So now with the maxed out power, I think this is a guaranteed one-hit KO on the first Seal, and a guaranteed 2-hit KO on the Dugong. Yeah, we do well over half to Dugong here now. And let's just see what kind of range it is on the Piloswine. It does over half. So basically, after we actually manage to get his accuracy down a little bit, we may be able to just get a 2 or 3-hit KO after he uses that Hyper Potion. This time we do manage to get a miss though, and honestly, once he misses one time, we can actually just 2-shot him with Return. He won't use a Hyper Potion from half health, I don't believe. So we do actually manage to beat Pryce with our Pidgeotto, and it's probably too much thinking to sit here and try to set up that Mud Slap plus the Detect strategy there. It's probably better there to just go for the 30% chance that he misses and hit him twice to knock him out. Anyway, that does bring us to Jasmine now, and we're just gonna have to see how this one goes. I'm honestly pretty scared coming into this fight. I don't think we're gonna one-shot anything. I accidentally came in with the Pink Bow rather than the Paralyzed Cure Berry, but you know, that is what it is. Let's just see what kind of range we get here. Of course, we immediately get Thunder Waved, which is probably the end of this first attempt, but we can see the Magnemites are 2-hit KOs, and Thunderbolt basically one-shots us. We do manage to get the Steelix here only for Iron Tail to knock us out, so we don't have a chance to win on that one. So let's try this again with the Paralyzed Cure Berry, because then we just need 1 Thunder Wave miss, and then we should have a decent shot of getting to the Steelix on full health. Sure enough, we do manage to get here, so I'm going to go for the Mud Slap first just to see how much damage we do, and in this one we did 6 damage with the first Mud Slap. I'm still going to try to set them all up here, but we can see Iron Tail's definitely just 2-hit KOing against our Pidgeotto. So with that, we simply go down on the first attempt. That's basically fine, it's what I expect, but now we know that the only strategy that was available to us was to go with the rare candies. So of course, previously with Pidgeot, we went for 3 of the rare candies to get ourselves up to level 38. I'm going to try the same strategy here with Pidgeotto just to see what that does, because we're doing significantly less damage with things like Mud Slap here. So I do think we need the extra levels to make this one at least reasonable, but let's try this and see. So here at level 38, we do manage after a couple attempts to get back to Steelix, and now our Mud Slap is doing 8 damage, so still not great. We are now in a 3-hit KO range from this Steelix though, and we can see we did about 14 damage with our Return return. So it's actually looking pretty similar to what we were doing with the Pidgeot at level 35 previously, which makes me think we need to gain more levels with this Pokemon if we're going to match what its evolved form did. So here I'm going to actually level up to level 40. That leaves one rare candy in the bag. We can get up to level 41 as our maximum, but let's just see if this helps us at all. So here at level 40, we did 9 damage with our Mud Slap, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to survive 3 Iron Tails here. So we're really going to need to get all the Mud Slaps on, hoping to lower its accuracy, and we simply do not get that luck this time. This time we at least managed to set up all of the Mud Slaps. Now let's see what Return does. It has 42 HP remaining, and we did 15 damage there with Return. So we would need 2 more hits here, assuming she doesn't Hyper Potion, but of course she does. And at 15 damage per hit, that's less than the 17 damage per hit that we were doing with the Pidgeot. So this could still be pretty random. Obviously, one more hit will knock us out here. And of course, she manages to land it and we go down. So that's clearly not happening at this current level. And we can only gain 1 more level via rare candies here. I'm just interested to see how much more damage that gets us to do. Because again, if we can do just a little bit more damage, we might reduce the number of hits we need by 1 in order to actually be able to get through this. And of course, there is a chance that the Magnemites just go Thunderbolt on us, which is terrible, because if they actually land the Thunderbolt, we get to the Steelix on low enough health that it can simply knock us out the next turn. Really not the ideal situation. So here, once again, we do manage to at least get Steelix's accuracy all the way down, and Return is now doing 17 damage. So assuming we get the right ranges, we could manage to get through this, but we're still going to need a ton of misses because 1 more hit will knock us out and we simply go down on that attempt. But it's just worth saying that at least in terms of the amount of damage that we're doing, in order to get to the same range that we were on the Pidgeot at level 38, we had to get to level 41 with this Pokemon. That means effectively that Pidgey will never be able to get to the same amount of damage that we were doing with that Pidgeot. So we're really needing a run where we don't get hit by Iron Tail, at least for a very long time. So this time we're still on green health as we finish setting up the Mud Slaps, and now we can go back and do our Return. She of course will Hyper Potion. We at least get 1 hit on her the turn that she uses the Hyper Potion though, and because we're faster, we do get a hit first, but then she critical hits the Iron Tail when we have her down to 21 HP, so we lose yet again. So here I'm going to give this a few more attempts, because while yes, we did manage to get through with Fearow and with Pidgeot, those were admittedly pretty lucky ranges to get that many misses in a row from the Steelix. Even with all of the accuracy drops, it's still going to hit you at least like 25% of the time. So in the time that it takes for you to hit it 7 times, you should be getting hit about twice, which is kind of standard, which means that on average, you're still going to go down here. So with that being said, I'm not sure if the luck actually lines up effectively to make this a reasonable Pokemon to get through. And given that I've taken 20 attempts on this battle at this point, I think we can call it, at least as it's played out, unreasonable. Pidgeotto is out of there. And of course, if Pidgeotto is out, that also means that Pidgey is eliminated right here on Jasmine. Who knows? It may have been able to get, 2 Jasmine or not. I'm not sure. Probably just because Pryce probably punts on a few of those fights there. But Jasmine with that Hyper Potion is the real reason why this doesn't work. If she didn't use a Hyper Potion and we just had to get the luck for her to not hit us while we set up the Mud Slaps and then just chip her down with the Return, I think this would be reasonable. It's the fact that we have to both get that luck and then we have to deal with the Hyper Potion and then we have to knock her down from full health when we're still getting knocked out on average with 2 more hits that I feel makes this one unreasonable, and we just have to eliminate this Pokemon. So out of all those flying type Pokemon, only Noctowl legitimately passed this section without any shenanigans. When it came to our Pidgeot and Fearow, we had to use rare candies to get through. I'm going to have to check why that Pidgey and Pidgeotto showed up there. I will get that fixed. And then Pidgey and Pidgeotto are our first two legitimate fail Pokemon in this section. Their evolved form probably got pretty lucky to get through at the level that it did. Granted, after I used the rare candies, I got through on the first attempt there, which is why I'm just going to allow it to simply progress in the game. I've always said if I get really lucky, I will just let that Pokemon go. Pretenders will eventually get weeded out, so I think it's just fine. But for Pidgey and Pidgeotto, this is just way too much. They do not deserve any further chances to be in this challenge. They are eliminated. And honestly, the only things that I can really think of that would help those Pokemon get through here would be some sort of good hidden power typing to deal with rock and steel type Pokemon. So honestly, something like hidden power water could make sense. Or we could even be talking about a hidden power fighting, but a high damage version of that as their best opportunity to be able to progress in the game. Of course, that would require manipulating very specific DVs to have the highest powered hidden power fighting or highest powered hidden power ground, for example. But that's basically what I think they would need in order to actually progress in the game. Maybe a member wants to try to save one of them, but for now, those Pokemon are eliminated. So that leaves us with two challengers in this one. Of course, we've got Raticate and we've got Furret. And I'm going to lead off with Raticate as the Gen 1 Pokemon, but then we're going to look at Furret and our channel member Sentret just to see how those Pokemon do. And Raticate comes in here with Dig, Tail Whip, Hyper Fang, and Mud Slap. By a level up in this section is probably only going to learn the move Pursuit, which won't really do that much for us. But of course, if we get really desperate at any point in this section, we can learn a lot of new moves. Return obviously is our strongest same type move. We can get Thunder if we really need it for the Poliwrath. Honestly, I think we have enough tools to get through here, but let's just see how it actually goes. And of course, our good speed and attack, plus the fact that we have Stab Hyper Fang, is pretty good in this section. We basically one-shotted everything up here to the final Rocket Executive. Here we go Hyper Fang on the Arbok, and we just barely missed the one-hit KO. So I just knock it out with a Mud Slap after that. We're going to go back to Hyper Fang for the Gloom. It's going to be a two-hitter here, but honestly, we can do anything at this point, just knock Pokemon out. And we level up to learn Pursuit, but I'm just going to skip this move. I don't think it's actually very valuable given our lower special attack, and we can get better dark type moves anyway. So as we get to the final Murkrow, just a Hyper Fang to one-shot that Pokemon, and we have easily defeated all of the Rockets in this section. Funny enough, with our Raticate that has the Raticate tail. So if Slowpoke with the Slowpoke tail can also defeat them, that would be kind of hilarious given the code words that they decided to use. But now we have to decide how to route in this one, and I think we go straight to Pryce on the basis that we don't necessarily have a great matchup against Jasmine, though Dig will be much stronger than using a move like Mud Slap, and we're weak against Chuck's Gym. So I just don't think it makes sense to go there immediately. Pryce is the only place where we're just facing neutral damage, and we may have a decent chance of getting through these Pokemon. So let's try Pryce one time and see if we can get it to go. Of course, he leads off with the Seal. I go Hyper Fang. We do not quite get the one-hit KO, and then he rests against us. But that's basically fine. We can do anything after that to just knock that Pokemon out. Dugong is out next. Hyper Fang does about half. We miss the next Hyper Fang as it goes for rest, but mostly we should hit this move, and we just two-shot after that. Piloswine comes out last. Hyper Fang looks to be a three-hit KO, but it just goes missed. And then we can basically do anything. He's going to Hyper Potion once, of course, but once he's on low health, I think even Dig will simply knock this Pokemon out. I got a little too cocky. We needed one more hit to knock it out, but we still get through on the first attempt as we get to level 31. So Pryce really isn't that big of an issue for this Pokemon. We're now just going to have to see how we do against the next two gym leaders, though. They're the ones that could potentially be a serious issue for Raticate. Now, of course, one opportunity that we have to get through fights is to potentially flinch our opponents, and that could make an otherwise impossible fight possible. But for now, I'm going to come straight to the Black Belt Bros and just see if I can manage to beat them with Hyper Fang. We one-shot there against the Hitmonlee. Out next comes the Hitmonchan. I don't think we're going to one-shot here, but it doesn't have any fighting type move. So 2 hits is enough to just knock that Pokemon out, and it flinched, so we got through really easily. Now it's on to the other trainers in here, whom hopefully we can just get through nice and easy, but it's a little more suspect with them using things like Karate Chop. Fortunately, they don't have smart AI, so we even get something like a Rock Slide there, which is not the correct move to use against our Raticate. And all those shenanigans mean that we get through to Chuck just fine. Now the only real question is, how do we do against Chuck himself? We might need a flinch on that Poliwrath or to get good luck with it missing the dynamic punch multiple times. We'll just have to see. But for now, let's get into the fight and just see if we can get the victory. So Chuck attempt number 1, Hyper Fang on the Primeape with a crit, gets the one hitter. That brings out Poliwrath. We Hyper Fang and do slightly less than half. So I think it doesn't matter what we do. I'm going to go for the Tail Whip here. We get confused, though we do survive the dynamic punch. And if we could just land one more hit, I'm pretty sure we win there. This time we get leered by the first Primeape, and I'm going to go for the Tail Whip right away on the Poliwrath, just hoping that I can get it to take more than half damage. Then a critical hit would one-shot there. Unfortunately, we get hit by Dynamic Punch. Nothing that we can do about that. Now, when we don't get hit by a Leer, I think the best strategy is actually to go Mud Slap turn 1 here and just reduce the accuracy of Dynamic Punch. After that, we can go for 2 Hyper Fangs and actually win against Chuck. So it didn't take that many attempts. You know, the fact that Dynamic Punch is such an inaccurate move is actually a major help to us, because that means Mud Slap strats can work there. But now with that done, it's time to go and take on Jasmine. And this is a spot where we don't really have any new upgraded moves. Like Stab Dig is going to basically be as strong as it gets for us with this Pokemon. I believe we will one-shot both of the Magnemites, and then it's just about what the range is on the Steelix. It's probably not going to be pretty. We really wish that instead of just Thunder and Blizzard, it was also possible to learn something like Fire Blast here, just because obviously that would set us up in a situation where we could at least have a super effective move that is special in our back pocket in case things go awry. Or of course, if this were like Gen 1, things like Bubble Beam would be in play. But this is Gen 2 and they do not have that as a TM here. So we're just going to have to get through with what we've got. Now, in this case, I don't actually think we need a Paralyzed Cure Berry, because I don't think we're actually going to get paralyzed all that often. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to equip the King's Rock here. The entire idea of this is that it will allow me to potentially flinch even when I'm using a move like Dig against that Steelix. Let's see how this actually works though. So first off, against the Magnemite, we just go Dig here. It misses Thunderbolt. It gets one shot nice and easy. So that's never going to be a problem on these Magnemites. Because we're faster and using a 4x super effective strong move, they don't have any possibility of actually damaging us. Now against the Steelix though, let's see what this range actually looks like. Dig did 21 damage. That would mean this is a 5-hit KO, but we get the flinch the first turn. We managed to land the next Dig, but here we've taken a nice big Iron Tail. So definitely not looking great because we're going to be 2-shot here. We get another nice flinch though, and that makes me think that maybe Mud Slap is the way to go, just to lower some accuracy and have a chance to get through that Pokemon. So this time, instead of going for Dig immediately, I'm going to go for Mud Slap first, hoping to reduce the accuracy of that Iron Tail, and we're getting very good luck without getting hit by a single Iron Tail so far. And now what I'm going to do is actually set up a couple of Tail Whips on this Pokemon. It screeches. Now Screech means that if it does hit Iron Tail, I'm going to get wrecked. So I'm going to have to Dig right here and hope to deal enough damage. She Hyper Potions from that range, but now our Dig after the 2 Tail Whips is doing 40 damage. So this is a 3-hit KO. If we can get one flinch, we'll guarantee the victory. Instead, she gets the Iron Tail just before we knock her out and we lose. Still, even without going for all the Mud Slaps, it looks like using just a couple of those Tail Whips could make a big difference on this one. So that's what I'm going to go for. She's on 71 HP right now, and I used 2 Tail Whips. Yet again, getting her in that range, we get the flinch. Now she Hyper Potions, unfortunately, but this is still going to be a 3-hit KO. We just need the flinch. We get it. And now, because of flinch strats, we were able to beat Steelix. This really comes down to the fact that we do not have to worry at all about the Thunder Wave from those two Magnemites. That is a huge difference from what we were dealing with like Pidgeot and Fearow. They needed the Paralyzed Cure Berry to reliably get to the Steelix. Whereas here, we don't need that. We get to Steelix every single time, 100% of the time. We'll never fail to get there. So we can put on the King's Rock instead in order to give us that chance to get those flinches, add on accuracy drops, add on a couple of defense drops, and suddenly you have a situation where Raticate really isn't that bad to get through Jasmine. It's not going to be perfectly consistent by any means, but way, way better than what we were just dealing with those normal flying birds. So with Raticate getting through, let's move on to our last legitimate challenger, which is Furret, and then we've got our channel member pick Sentret to also test out in this one. So Furret finished the last section with a moveset of Dig, Defense Curl, Strength, and Rollout. Defense Curl Rollout could be really strong even when it's resisted by some opponents. It's definitely going to be a strat on Pryce. Dig is obviously a pretty decent move to be using against Jasmine's first two Pokemon, and in theory we can learn a bunch of TM moves because we've got access to elemental punches with this Pokemon, something that we did not have with the Raticate. So if we get desperate, we can start looking at things like Fire Punch. We can look at Surf with this Pokemon, which is legitimately available. Thunder Punch if we're struggling on the Poliwrath. There are just tons and tons of moves to think about in this section, but Stab Strength might be pretty good for a lot of Pokemon. And while we could learn Slam via level up, Strength is already a much better move, so we don't even need to worry about adding that move onto our moveset. And everything in this Rocket Hideout should be an absolute cakewalk given this moveset, so let's just get straight to the end. And sure enough, we make it to the final battle here with no real issues. We're coming in slightly less than full health, but it honestly shouldn't make much difference here. We'll even start setting up Rollout. We miss Rollout on Gloom, so I guess I'll just go back to Strength there. And finally, Murkrow, Strength, gets an easy one-hit KO, so we simply win that fight with no issues whatsoever. And after clearing out this section, I think the best play is to just follow what we did with Raticate and go to Pryce first, especially because we've got Rollout. I think it's going to be a perfectly good strategy there with the Defense Curl to just be able to get through this fight nice and easy. So Pryce attempt number 1, I'm just going to lead off with the Defense Curl. Of course, Seal is not a Ice-type Pokemon, and I misclicked and used Dig there, but we'll just switch into Rollout after that. It's going to take 2 hits from Rollout to knock that Pokemon out. Dugong's out next, and it gets completely destroyed by Rollout because it is an Ice type, and then it's at least neutrally effective against the Piloswine, and it goes down in a single hit due to the buildup. So Pryce never stood a chance. We beat him on the first attempt. So with Pryce very easily dispatched, we can now move on in the game, and honestly, this is one where we might actually have a better chance against Jasmine than we do against Chuck. But I'm going to try Chuck first because there are a couple randos in his gym that we can use to level up on. The only reason I think that Jasmine will be easier is because we can actually use Dig for the 2 Magnemites, and then we could actually use a move like Surf in order to be able to get through the Steelix. And since we would be using a really strong special move, we can probably get through that Steelix much more easily than what we were looking at with Dig previously. Even given that we have a much lower special attack stat than physical attack stat, the lower special defense of Steelix probably makes up for that. For now though, I am going to come into Chuck's gym and let's just see how this actually goes. So first off, of course, he's got the Hitmonlee. I'm just going to go Strength here and get the easy one-hit KO. That brings out Hitmonchan next, where we're just going to stick with the same strat. Strength will get a 2-hit KO on the Hitmonchan, but it's not really an issue as we get through the Black Belt Bros on the first attempt. And with that, we managed to get to Chuck very, very easily. And I think this is easily just a King's Rock spot. We're going to be faster than everything. I'm pretty sure Strength also works with the King's Rock. And as long as it does, then the chance to flinch is worth everything for us here in this fight. So first up against Chuck's Primeape, I'm just going to go for Strength, and it is a 2-hit KO as we get leered, but we knock it out the next turn. Poliwrath comes out next. We hit Strength and do well over half with a crit and get the flinch. So Strength just knocks it out on the next turn. That was incredibly lucky to get the crit and the flinch, especially because I didn't heal, so I didn't have full PP and Strength, but it doesn't matter. In the end, we easily win that fight. And even if we hadn't, we would have just needed like 1 flinch and 1 miss miss from the dynamic punch, for example, in order to make that one go. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. Like, for him to miss 2 dynamic punches in a row is a 25% chance. Definitely within the range of luck that I look for when I'm talking about needing to just have 1 critical hit in order to win a fight. So yeah, I'll totally take it. But now with that done, it is time to go back to Olivine and go get Jasmine back to her gym, where I'm going to go in first with my moveset as it is, just to see how it goes. I'm assuming I'm going to lose the first attempt though, just because I don't think Dig's going to do enough to that Steelix, even with the chance to flinch, because unlike the Raticate before, we don't have any weighted lower defense here. But even with that being said, it might be worth it to just try this once, but assuming that it doesn't work out, we're going to switch into Surf pretty quickly here, and I think that strategy will in fact get us through. For now, there's nothing to do but test this out. So Jasmine attempt number 1, of course we go Dig on the first Magnemite. That's an easy 1-hit KO victory. Second Magnemite is going to get more of the same action, and now against the Steelix, I'm actually going to lead off with a Defense Curl, just so that it does less damage to me. Now I'm going to Dig and see what the range is. We did 21 damage here, so it looks exactly the same as Raticate. This will be a 5-hit KO, needing some flinches to get through in this setup, and a critical hit Iron Tail just finished us off. Still, this could even just come down to needing some flinches, and when he misses an Iron Tail, I'm just going to take that opportunity to set up yet another Defense Curl just to further boost my defense. We get a nice Iron Tail miss, and here, because of the Defense Curl, he's not doing nearly as much damage as usual. We get the Hyper Potion from Jasmine, of course, and we're on very low health, so we would need to take no more hits from here. We don't manage a single flinch, but it probably wasn't going to go either way. We were nowhere close to actually knocking that Pokemon out. Still, that is where Surf comes in, and I think this is effectively the best strategy that we've got for getting through this section. Now, which move should we delete? Honestly, I'm going to just forget Defense Curl, because pretty soon, once we're able to use Waterfall outside of battle, we're going to be able to get the Defense Curl TM again, as well as once we get to the next section in Blackthorn, we're going to be able to use the move deleter. So we'll be able to get rid of moves like Surf and Strength if we don't want them anymore. So I think this is a perfectly fine strategy. While Defense Curl might help with a range somewhere in the next section with the rollouts, in general, I think that if you could get it with Defense Curl plus rollout, you're probably still going to get it with rollout. So I think this is the way to go. Tell me if you think that's a mistake in the comments down below, but I'm just using that as my logic. Since we're not permanently losing Defense Curl, we're only temporarily losing it, I think it's the best play. So let's try now against Jasmine with this upgraded moveset. Obviously, Dig is still the play on the first 2 Magnemites, which will allow us to easily destroy them. But now on the Steelix, we go Surf. And Surf does massive damage with a crit. It hits the Iron Tail, but she immediately has to Hyper Potion, and this could even be a 2-hit KO depending on the range, and sure enough, we get it. So Furret, once it adds on Surf, is just not even a problem to get through Jasmine. It gets through super easily, by far and away the most consistent Pokemon in this episode, because it just has the type coverage. And of course, we could go slightly less than Surf. We could have thrown on something like Fire Punch, but it would have been the same thought process and just a weaker move overall. So I think this is the strategy that makes the most sense, and we got the job done. So with that done, it brings us to the last Pokemon of today. Channel member pick from Bruins Girl 33. It is our Sentry, the Sentret, who is coming in with Shadow Ball, Defense Curl, Dig, and Rollout. Of course, Shadow Ball was added on earlier in the run to allow this Pokemon to get through Ghost Pokemon. I think that move's going to fall out pretty quick here based on what we just saw with the evolved form of this Pokemon, but we're going to just stick with it for now because we've got some randos to take down. Let's just see how this actually goes. Now, it is important to note that Sentret cannot learn Strength, which separates it from its evolved forms Furret. Furret gets a lot more moves, but elemental punches are still in play here, as well as the Defense Curl rollout strats, so I think we're going to be just fine, and we're basically going for the same strategy on Jasmine. Now, Sentret overall is doing just fine here, though it is a bit weaker than Furret, obviously. So I actually lost one time on this second to last executive here. I got confused and then was not able to set up all of my rollout effectively. Once you get the rollout fully set up, I'm pretty sure you just crush this section, but Hyper Fang does a lot of damage here. This time, however, we do manage to win, and we can move on in the game. Still, we do have to backtrack out even to heal just because we took too much damage and had to use our healing items that we had in stock already. But with that done, we can make our way to the final executive here in the Rocket Hideout, and I think Sentret's going to be just fine. Let's see. So here, while Dig would be the best play just against the Arbok itself, I think the better strat overall is to go for the Defense Curl rollout, but we're taking massive damage here due to a lot of chip damage and misses, so we actually lose the first attempt. And since I didn't save just before that fight, assuming that I would win, I actually had to refight that second to last executive. We did get through him nice and easy though, so it's back to the final executive for the second attempt. Still, if we don't get bad luck with rollout misses, I'm pretty sure we build up nicely and just 3-shot here against the Arbok, and then we should 1-shot everything else with the built up rollout. But of course, we have to immediately miss on Gloom, and that means that we're going down in this one. This time we do 1-shot there against the Gloom though. That brings out the Murkrow, which just gets 1-shot as well by a rollout. So we are able to win that fight with no major issues. It's just a matter of not getting bad luck. But now I'm going to follow the same strategy that I did in the previous run with Furret, going straight to Pryce. And I think the Defense Curl rollout will just crush here, but let's see how it actually goes. So first off, against the Seal, we go Defense Curl, it goes Icy Wind. We're already slow, so that doesn't make that much of a difference, though we're now slower than Seal. And that allows it to heal up there, but we are able to knock it out the next turn. Aurora Beam does not one-shot me, but then I miss on the Dugong. That's basically the end of this run. Managed to get back to Dugong and survive on just 2 HP as we knock it out. Piloswine's out next, and it hits the Blizzard. Due to the Icy Wind, we couldn't outspeed there. This may be a spot to give the Quick Claw, just because Sentret is so incredibly slow, might be the only way to progress here. Of course, with the Quick Claw on, we have the potential to be able to move even when we're slower. And of course, I had to misclick on this one, meaning that I simply used the wrong move. But let's try this one again. This time we knock out the Dugong again, we get back to Piloswine, only to get immediately knocked out by a Fury attack. This time we yet again knock out Dugong though, we make it to Piloswine and he misses the Blizzard. That gives us all that we needed to be able to beat Pryce. It wasn't very pretty, but we did manage to get through, Bruins girl. You are continuing in this challenge with your Sentret. And now honestly, the biggest issue is just that we don't have that same type move in Strength, so I think our best play is actually to replace Shadow Ball here with Headbutt, because we're gonna need flinches, but I also think that we're gonna need to outspeed, which is why I think we have to keep the Quick Claw on. That's gonna be my strategy to try to get through Chuck's gym. This one could be really, really tough though. I'm not sure if it's actually gonna work out. We could, of course, end up just going to Jasmine first and going for the Surf strat just like we did before, but Defense Curl might actually have some value here in Chuck's gym, given the fact that it allows us to boost our defense stat. Honestly, it's Sentret's low speed that has always been the issue for this Pokemon, so we're just gonna have to see if we can get this to go or not. First up, of course, we've got to take on the Black Belt Bros that lead off with Hitmonlee, and Jump Kick just one-shots us there. We've got to be able to actually move faster if we're gonna have a chance here. This time we do land Headbutt and flinch the Hitmonlee, but we can see this is a 2-hit KO, and Jump Kick always one-shots us. We need the like 1 in 20 chance of that move missing, I think, to have a legit chance of getting through here. I've said many times, Quick Claw plus a critical hit is too much luck to ask for. So this might even be a spot where we have to go for maxed out power return in order to get through. I'm not sure, but for now, I'm going to try to go to Jasmine's gym instead with this Pokemon. So I'm just going to follow pretty much similar to what I did before, but I'm actually going to forget Headbutt here and learn Surf just because of the fact that we can always relearn Headbutt as well. So I don't know, it's probably not the best decision. We're going to have to probably replace that Headbutt later on somewhere, but for now, that's the move that's going to go. It's worth noting that Jasmine does give a badge boost in defense, which could really help us there. We might also gain a level here, which could help us there. So that's the whole logic for going to take on Jasmine now. I think Dig just completely destroys the 2 Magnemites, so then it's just a question of how much damage our Surf does against that Steelix. So let's try Jasmine and see how she goes. First attempt, of course, I will use Dig on the Magnemite, and that is a one-hit KO in fact. Second Magnemite comes out, it gets more of the same action, so very nice so far. Now Surf on the Steelix does not as much as I had hoped. 43 damage. So this will be a 3-hit KO no matter what we do. We could get a crit and get a 2-hitter, but that's the only way we're actually getting through this. And we're actually in a speed tie with the Magnemite, so definitely not looking good there. Iron Tail, of course, has a 25% chance to miss, and I think that's what we're basically banking on here to have any real shot of getting through. Now, because we're in the speed tie here, we definitely don't need the Quick Claw on this one, so I'm going to put on the Paralyzed Cure Berry so that if I do get paralyzed, I'll still be able to move after that, and I think that's the best strategy here. So now against the Steelix, again, we just have to go Surf and hope that it misses the Iron Tail. We get the first miss, and we get a second miss. Now she Hyper Potions, and if we can crit, we'll definitely win. Instead, she just misses the Iron Tail a third time. That's incredibly lucky, but we do manage to get it to go, so we'll take it. Jasmine goes down, but a crit would have also allowed us to get the 2-hit KO, in which case we only need the 25% chance to get a single Iron Tail miss. So that is at least my logic on that one. Tell me if you agree or not, but it does allow us to get through that section, and we're ready to move back down to Chuck's gym and see if we can finally make it through this section. Here we at least now survive the jump kick, which is a massive improvement from before. And here I'm simply going to learn Headbutt with my Pokemon. Honestly, I don't think that Dig has that much value in the next couple of sections, so I'm gonna forget Dig here in order to learn Headbutt, and let's just see what that does for us here. I've also put on the Goldberry on the logic that if I can one-shot with a crit, which I'm not sure if I can, but if I can one-shot with a crit, then I'm just going to try to crit and one-shot and then let the Goldberry do its thing. So here we survive the jump kick, we get the critical hit 1-hit KO on that Hitmonlee. That brings us to Hitmonchan, and of course it knocks us out immediately. So clearly this just doesn't work for us on the basis that we would need to survive and then heal, but that's not enough healing. Okay, so Quick Claw it is. Let's see what this does for us. Now it looks like it is only on a lower damage roll that we survive the jump kick. It's possible, just not likely, it seems. And now the question is, while Headbutt is not getting the range to one-shot here, is it possible to get the range if instead we used a maxed out return here? Because we really don't have any other decent options as far as neutral moves. Already mentioned strength is not on the table and it wouldn't one-shot anyway, so I think this is the play. Yes, it puts us kind of in unreasonable TM's territory, but it's effectively the best move that we can have against these Hitmons since they have higher special defense than defense. So let's just see what this move does, especially if we manage to outspeed with the Quick Claw. Here return is still not a one-hit KO. We do get the Quick Claw after that though, allowing us to knock that Pokemon out, but this is really not looking good here. Because if return is not one-shotting against the Hitmonlee, it definitely doesn't one-shot against the Hitmonchan, and that means that we're going to be in trouble. This time it survives with only 1 HP, so it is possible that maybe with the perfect damage roll we could one-shot there though. So I'm going to test it a few more times just to see. And sure enough, it is possible to get the one-hit KO there with a perfect damage roll, but we need to get that perfect damage roll plus actually outspeed with the Quick Claw, which is pretty lucky. And it might mean that Sentret actually does need to go for some rare candies. However, we do finally get that luck right here. A good 9 attempts in on the Black Belt Bros. That means that we get to go to the Hitmonchan on full health. Of course, it does not have moves that are nearly as strong against us as that Hitmonlee. So while this is a 2-hitter, we easily win when we come into that fight on good health. And that means that we now have a chance to make our way towards Chuck without having used any rare candies just yet. Now, via level up, we could learn Rest, but I'm actually going to skip this move. Number one, because I don't think we can survive enough turns to actually use Rest at this point, but number two, because it's a TM that's coming up in the Ice Path anyway, so it's not like we're really missing out on anything by not getting Rest immediately. Still, I don't think that move really is going to be useful on a Sentret. It's probably much more useful on a Furret that actually has some stats. This Pokemon's just too defensively weak, I think, to actually make use of the move. And that's one of those kind of important things to keep in mind. Like in a normal solo run where people are leveling up to whatever level they need to beat their opponents, well, if you're over leveled, rest is really good because you can just use it even with a fairly weak Pokemon in order to heal status in the middle of the battle, and you just have to pick whatever opponent is likely to do the least amount of damage to you. But in the minimum battles run, rest is actually a significantly weaker move because oftentimes you're under leveled relative to the toughest opponents in the game, and you can't survive that many turns against them. So even if you wanted to use it, you'd have to use it incredibly judiciously in a minimum battles challenge, because usually your stats just won't justify it. Anyway, with that being said, we have made it to Chuck. It's time to see if we can beat him with our Sentret, or do we need to make a moveset change? This one could be a little tough. First up, of course, we've got the Primeape. It goes Leer. I'm just going to go Return. This is a 2-hit KO, but after the Leer, at least a critical hit Karate Chop just one-shot me, but probably even a non-crit Karate Chop does the job there. This time we get a crit on the Primeape though, knocking it out in a single hit. We get a nice Dynamic Punch miss and a crit against Poliwrath, only to get Dynamic Punched down the next turn. But if we can get 2 Dynamic Punch misses there, we should have a legit chance of getting through this one. And here we really just need a Quick Claw activation on the Primeape, which should happen a reasonable percentage of the time. Ideally, we want that Quick Claw on the second turn though. This time we get Quick Claws on both turns against Primeape, but immediately get Dynamic Punched down. This time we actually managed to survive against Primeape with 5 HP remaining, only to get punched down yet again, but it proves that it is possible to get through Primeape even without getting a critical hit here. We just need a non-crit Karate Chop, and then yet again, it's about the 2 Dynamic Punch misses, and ideally if we can get a Quick Claw activation, that will really help us get through this one. Now, the reason that I don't think rare candies are really going to help us that much here is because no matter what we do, there's no way we're going to outspeed against that Primeape. And even the Poliwrath is significantly faster than us, so without the Quick Claw, we're just never going to outspeed here either. So really, this is the best strategy that I think we can come up with, at least at our current level, is just to go all in on this strategy of trying to use Return and hoping for the misses. So here we get a nice crit on the Poliwrath, and it misses 2 of the Dynamic Punches, so it took a ton of attempts, but it is ultimately possible to get through Chuck there. It's not super great, but ultimately it comes down to you don't actually need to get a crit or anything on the first Primeape. In fact, it can go Leer, go Karate Chop, you'll still survive a non-critical hit there. Still, that's a high critical hit chance move, so you're going to get crit a lot, but not every time. In fact, not most of the time. So most of the time you survive. And then you just need 2 Dynamic Punch misses in a row if you're going to get a single crit, but you can also get 3 Dynamic Punch misses in a row. It's probably a little bit too luck-based to actually legitimately continue, but hey, Bruins girl joined as a channel member. Channel members we know are overpowered, which is why they get a little bit of extra compared to everybody else. Still, if this were the legit, challenger in the minimum battles challenge, Sentret would be way out of here. But for Bruins girl, appreciate you for your support. Already going on 3 months as a channel member. Now, if you would like to join the channel memberships, there are tons of Pokemon still available. There's a link in the description where you can check out all the Pokemon that are still on the available list. We're going to have to add Pidgey and Pidgeotto to that. And 7 channel members have not gotten me a member pick yet. Brandon Edwards, Dennis the ZZZ, Joey Hepler, Limes Polytheist, and TTC345. If you have not already, go to the link in the description below and put in your channel URL. That is not the URL with @ plus your ID handle. YouTube doesn't let me download that data. You got to do your actual channel URL. Like if you were to go to your channel, basically open Studio, go to Customize, and then you will find your channel URL in that section. That's where you need to be. But then once you take that URL and plug it into the GSC Pokemon Challenges website, you will be able to make your member pick and choose moves for your Pokemon. So test it out. Give me a pick if you want to. If you have trouble, drop me a comment and let's get more channel members joined up in this, because trust me, we're gonna have a few Pokemon falling off in this section. I can just feel it. I can just feel it. There will probably be some really lucky Pokemon that still manage to get through, though. It's just the law of large numbers. But hey, we have managed to get through. Bruins girl, thank you again for your support. Appreciate ya. Let's wrap this episode up. So as we wrap this one up, we have found officially our first two Pokemon that completely fell off here and could not progress in the game, at least not without outrageous luck. Like, yes, eventually, with infinite resets, the Mud Slaps would get us through Jasmine, but I'm not sitting here resetting for that. That's too luck-based for this. Pidgeot and Fearow are also looking like potential pretenders here, and they may have just given up any opportunity of actually completing the game by using rare candies. But outside of that, we got the rest of our challengers through and basically fit my predictions at the start of this episode. Though, like I said, we could easily have had 4 out of our 7 fail here. And as a member pick, of course, Sentret did manage to get through, but yet again, did not look perfectly consistent by any means there. So it's a kind of interesting section of the game that is shaping up to be. And next time, we're going to have 8 more challengers that are really going to dig into some more possibilities here. We're going to be bringing in some of our poison, ground, and electric types, starting with Arbok. Of course, we've got Dig, so that should be perfectly fine against the Magnemites on Jasmine. But what are we going to do for that Steelix with this poison type Pokemon? It could be done right there. Pikachu and Raichu are also coming in. Yet again, if they had Surf from Gen 1, because we know how good Surfing Pikachu is, they could have a legitimate shot. But without a move like that, we're going to really have to see what we can do against Jasmine. I'm not sure if they learn Dynamic Punch. If they do, that could be a strat. Sandslash as a ground type Pokemon might actually have the best chances against Jasmine, but then struggle against Chuck and against Pryce because of its type disadvantages there. Then we've got our Nidos, Nidoking and Nidoqueen, who will not learn ground type moves at this point in the game. So they're going to have to find other ways to be able to get through Jasmine. And I'm not sure that Nidoran male or Nidorino are progressing any further than this. I could conservatively, just personally, without looking at any of the data in advance, because I never pre-game these ones, I would just predict that there's a high likelihood that Arbok, Pikachu, possibly Raichu, and those 2 less evolved Nidos could just be gone in the next episode, and we could start to see that fail column really grow as we run up against the absolute steel curtain that Jasmine has put in front of us. Anyway, those are my predictions. Make your own predictions down below. I will just give one last massive thank you to the channel members for their support and everybody for watching. You guys are making this channel grow so much, which is just incredible to me. Appreciate ya. I will see you in the next one. Later.